Recently, as he presented the emergency budget, David Osborne confirmed the worst fear of domestic students and universities in Britain as he introduced funding cuts up to £1 billion in the sector. Universities in Britain rely on the government for 35% of their total funding. But as the funds from the government dry up, universities are now looking towards domestic students to provide the extra funding. The cuts also mean that universities will not be able to meet their expansion plans and will be unable to increase the number of places. As a result, thousands of applicants will not be able to get a university place in the coming few years, leading to the prospect of a lost generation. Like many 18-year-old youngsters in Britain, Stephen Edward has appeared for his A-level exams and is waiting for his grades that will ascertain his university place. Being an above-average student, Stephen has already managed to get offers from 2 universities. Yet in the current situation, the thought of not getting a university place never leaves him.
Well, from here on, I'm hoping to go to university, hopefully Southampton, but if I don't do as well as I want with my exams, then I've decided to pick my second choice with lower grades, so that if I don't do as well as I want, I can still go to university. For me, personally, my biggest problem will be just not getting into university at all. I mean, things happen where I'll have to work all the time to pay for it, but not being there, I think, would be my biggest worry and the thing which at the moment's playing on my mind and will be until I get my results in August.
Stephen is not the only one who's plagued with these questions. The Socialist Students' Union is an organization opposing the new coalition government's decision of implementing higher education funding cuts.
Absolutely true that there is a huge public deficit, but where did that come from? It came from the economic crisis and especially from bailing out the bankers. Now exactly those same people who are responsible for the crisis are having bonuses, are having their pay at the same level as it was before the crisis. They haven't suffered at all, whereas it's ordinary working class people, young people, students who are paying the price through cuts in education, but cuts across the in all the services that's available to them. So we don't think that it's on that these cuts are especially affecting education, because how are people going to be able to train to get the jobs, to get the skills to be able to work? It's really not only is it that young people are being unemployed because of this crisis, are losing their jobs, but if you cut off access to training, if you don't create jobs, then you're consigning a generation to the dustbin.
But the reduced number of places is not the only hurdle for students this year. Due to the funding cuts, universities are now pushing for domestic student fee cap to be raised or removed entirely. The Lord Browne Fee Review, a committee appointed by the last government, is set to give its recommendations in October this year. It is widely expected to suggest raising the fee caps for domestic students. This comes at a time when most students already rely on student loans to pay for their university education.
Well, I'm quite worried because I understand that once I've finished my 4-year course, I'm going to have to pay the money back, and I guess the system's good where I don't have to pay the money back instantly when I finish my course. It's when I start earning a certain wage, but when I do start earning that wage, the cut that I get from it could be quite detrimental to me for being someone who's just come out of university on quite a low wage, and especially as I've heard that the interest rates will be raised, I'm quite worried.
The National Union of Students, a main student body in Britain, is against any kind of motion that will allow the fee caps to be raised or removed.
You know, if we're honest, we had some reservations about the composition of the Browne Review. Lord Browne himself, as a former chief executive of BP, heavily interested in the market. He's joined by a competitions expert, by former advisors at Number 10, and by 2 university vice-chancellors whose it's in their interest for fees to rise. So, I think the odds are stacked against us.
But don't you think that universities need to make up for the loss of funding?
I think it's utterly unacceptable that if government is reducing funding to universities, that universities should simply assume that students will pay them any more. Apply this to any other marketplace. If the cost of raw materials are being cut in a particular industry, or if the costs are rising, they don't just automatically assume that the price for a particular good should go up. And I think it's even more important with education, assuming that there's a societal benefit to it, that the cost shouldn't be passed on.
But universities are pushing for raising the fee cap as they believe the lack of funds will affect the quality of education.
Money has to come to university from somewhere. So it either comes from direct taxation, which means that everyone pays towards universities, which means that some people who don't go to university subsidise those who do. That's historically what's happened. Or it has to come from those who benefit, i.e. the students. So that means the students have to pay what it actually costs to teach them. So I think that the fee cap will have to be raised, as I don't think there's any appetite for increasing general taxes.
Meanwhile, as student organizations and universities debate, the most influential decisions are to come from Westminster.
The only way in which we can ensure that the quality of universities is maintained and in which large numbers of young people who are qualified can go to university and have that experience, the only way we can do that is if there is a bigger graduate contribution. So yes, I am candid, more will have to be paid by graduates.
But as days turn to weeks, students like Stephen are fearful of being part of what is said to be a lost generation.